Jesus of Nazareth spent himself without reserve, seeking to proclaim the truth about God by word and action. He spent little time or thought upon himself. Where people needed him, there he was to be found. Yet he knew what it was to be let down utterly, to be lied about viciously, and to be hated without reason. He displayed no bitterness, no resentment or self-pity, and his dying prayer was for those who shockingly tortured and killed him, that they may be forgiven. May his example be our inspiration today. Let us pray. At the end of each short petition, I invite you to offer the prayer with me, Lord, make us free. From all selfishness and self-seeking, Lord, make us free. From all conceit and pride, Lord, make us free. From malice, spite, and resentment, Lord, make us free. From all hurtful words and actions, Lord, make us free. From bad temper and moodiness, Lord, make us free. From all ugliness of life and character, Lord, make us free. Heavenly Father, ruler of nations, we thank you today for the countless undeserved blessings that you have showered upon us and upon our country. Endow our leaders, we pray, with wisdom from on high. Cause them to rule in your fear and in accordance to your will, that we may lead a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and honesty, and that our nation and its people may prosper, both spiritually and temporally. Hold your protecting hand over our nation. Preserve our priceless liberties. Keep all believers faithful to you. And give us faith instead of unbelief, courage instead of fear, love instead of hate, peace instead of quarrels and war, and righteousness instead of sin everywhere and in everything. Hear this, our prayer, we most humbly beseech you. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, who taught us when we pray to say, Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
This Honorable House is now in session. I call on the Deputy Clerk.
Item number 2, confirmation of minutes.
Honorable members, is it your pleasure that the minutes of the meeting of 3rd June 2019 that has been circulated be confirmed? There being no dissenting voice, the minutes hereby stand confirmed as circulated. Those in favor? Those against? The minutes of Monday, 3rd June 2019 is confirmed. Deputy Clerk.
Item number 3, announcements by the Speaker.
I'd like to say a pleasant good morning to everyone in the gallery, those who are listening to us on Facebook, radio, and other social media. I'd like to recognize in the gallery the former Premier, Dr. D. Orlando Smith, and our former First Lady, Mrs. Lorna G. Smith. I also recognize in the gallery member-elect for the 4th District, Mr. Mark Vanterpool and Mrs. Vanterpool. And I'm told that we have amongst us also the 2018-2019 Prince and Princess, Ms. J. Pemberton and Mr. Cameron, and all the other contestants. Welcome, and we are happy to have you. I also bring apologies from, you may notice that the chairs are empty this morning. I bring you apologies for some of the honorable members who are on duty travel. They are Junior Minister for Trade and Economic Development and Territorial Member, Honorable Sherry B. De Castro, the Deputy Speaker and Territorial Member, Honorable Neville Smith, the Leader of the Opposition and Member for the 8th District, the Honorable Malcolm Penn, the Member for the 6th District, Honorable Alvaro Medura Keynes, and the Member for the 2nd District, Honorable Melvin M. Turnbull, all overseas on official business. I also bring you apologies on behalf of the clerk, who is also overseas, and welcome again to Ms. Industrious and Mrs. Penn. Honorable members, I am aware that the constituents of the 4th District, the media, and the public have been following with keen interest the matter of the 5th March 2019 resignation of member-elect Mr. Mark H. Vanterpool and the Speaker's acceptance of his resignation letter sent to the Office of Speaker addressed to the clerk. Subsequently, Mr. Vanterpool took the Speaker and by extension the House of Assembly to court to seek remedy over the matter. In addition, Mr. Vanterpool, through the court system, sought an injunction to interrupt the sitting of the House of Assembly and also sought judicial review on the Speaker's decision to accept his 5th March 2019 letter of resignation. Both legal action failed in the High Court. Mr. Vanterpool, in addition, did not show up to be sworn in on the 12th March 2019 like all other honorable members in the chambers to date. In the latest ruling, the High Court has suggested that Mr. Vanterpool be sworn in, as according to the learned judge, his letter was invalid simply because it was addressed to the wrong person. Notwithstanding the same court decision, the Madam Justice pointed out that the whole issue of sitting the member should have been a matter addressed by the House. My office has appealed the decision, but after consultation and reflection, withdrew all aspects of the appeal on 17 June 2019. Furthermore, the Leader of Government Business, Premier and Minister of Finance, and a member for the 1st District, the Honorable Andrew A. Foy, met with me and has expressed both privately and publicly his position that the member be sworn in. In addition, the opposition leader, the Honorable Malcolm A. Penn, and member for the 8th District, has been consistent in insisting that I swear in the member-elect from the 4th District. It is very compelling when the Premier and the Leader of the Opposition speak in one accord on a matter so weighty not only to the House, but how it affects representation or democracy and our constitutional arrangements. I have an obligation to listen, and that I did. However, more voices in this assembly have emerged, suggesting to me that I should take the advice of the High Court and seek a resolution where it is debated and voted on by members as to whether Mr. Vanterpool be seated in the 4th House of Assembly. There has emerged two opinions, one in which the Premier and the opposition leader made public their positions and requested of me to swear in the member. It must be noted that there are other voices in the chambers requesting that a resolution be brought, which they propose will get the entire House involved, so that the Speaker is not seen as making a unilateral decision on a matter that represents the legislative branch, which echoes the sentiment of the learned judge in her decision. The judgment of the High Court raised serious and unprecedented constitutional issues, the novelty and complexity of which warrant further judicial consideration by the Court of Appeal. It must be perplexing and confusing to many, to say the least, that an elected member who voluntarily drafts and submits a resignation letter and follows it up with a video blog and media interviews to explain and confirm his decision can be taken to have not voluntarily resigned. To many, it defies logic and common sense. That said, the Constitution of the Virgin Islands is the supreme law, which we are all duty-bound to uphold. Of paramount concern is the fact that the longer the legal battle, the greater the disadvantage to the people of the 4th District who remain without a district representative in the House, notwithstanding they have 4 at-large representatives. They should not be made to suffer for the action and conduct of others over which they had no control. They are innocent victims and have been pinned into an undeserving corner for which they must helplessly watch as the drama in the legal and political theater unfolds without any meaningful relief. I can no longer, in good conscience, continue the distress and inconvenience that the issue of Mr. Vanderpool's resignation has caused to so many. Whilst I appreciate the dynamics of the other voices in the chamber, there are times when the duty of our office demands that we rise above this and do what is just and right for the people of our beloved islands. I consider this to be one such occasion. As Speaker of this Honorable Assembly, it is my sacred and solemn responsibility to serve both the elected members and the people and ensure that we put the interests of the country first in all that we do. Winston Churchill once said, "A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity, an optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty." Today, I see a wonderful opportunity for us to vindicate and restore the faith of the people by honoring their democratic will, demonstrating respect for our courts, and recommitting to the constitutional values that forms the bedrock of our democracy. I therefore now invite Mr. Vanderpool to take the oath so that he can be sworn in as a member of the House, as the elected representative for the 4th District. May God bless our territory. I call on the Deputy Clerk.
Item number 4, administration of votes.
I, Mark.
Members, stand, please.
I, Mark H. Vanderpool, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God. I, Mark H. Vanderpool, do swear that I will well and truly serve Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II and the people of the Virgin Islands in the office of member for the 4th District. So help me God.
Honorable Mark H. Vanderpool is now a member of the House of Assembly, and he's invited to take his seat next to that of the opposition leader. Members, you may be seated. I call on the Deputy Clerk.
Item number 5, statements.
Speaker, on the point of order, and we rise if you allow me to, the kind commission was afforded other members in the sworn-in to serve you. I'm sure you can, Speaker.
Yeah, Honorable Member. Yeah, Honorable Member, in keeping with what happened on March 12th, where all the newly sworn-in members were allowed to speak on the other business, I would prefer that you speak then, when we reach to other business.
Speaker, I do appreciate your and respect your preference, but Mr. Speaker, on that day, the only business on the day was other business. Today, there's a long list of things to be carried out, and I think the people from the 4th District, in the spirit of democracy, should hear from the member who has just been sworn in, and I wish you would be kind enough, Mr. Speaker, though it's your privilege and your authority, that you'll be kind enough to allow me, as a member for the 4th District, to say a few words to my constituents, many of whom are here, and others who are listening, Mr. Speaker. I would be grateful for your indulgence.
Member for the 4th District, my position stands. You will speak under other business, as happened on March 12th when the other members were sworn in.
Mr. Speaker, is other business going to be today, or do I have to wait for days after several considerations are made in the House? And I think the privilege should be afforded to a member who has just been sworn in to speak to his constituents on a day like today, Mr. Speaker. I just think it's not fair, Mr. Speaker.
Member for the 4th District.
And I wish I would get help from others to encourage.
We are not going to prolong this back and forth. The chair, the speaker has denied you speaking, and members in the gallery making disturbance will have to leave. Members in the gallery making any disturbance will have to leave. Sergeant at Arms, please escort whoever that person was disrupting the session out.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure in the real spirit of democracy, Mr. Speaker, in the real spirit of democracy, it doesn't hurt for a member who's just been sworn in to say a few words.
Member for the 4th District, my position stands.
Mr. Speaker, this is a democratic House.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of information, I rise. The people of the 4th District need to be informed as to why I'm here and what I intend to do and how I intend to represent them. Mr. Speaker, please allow me that privilege on a point of information.
Member from the 4th District, is this new information you're bringing forward?
I have lots of information to give to my people.
I'm saying in terms of your request, you're standing on point of information.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Is the information different from what you previously stated that you wish to speak?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I wish to represent my people in the House of Assembly, which is the people's house.
Member from the 4th.
I should be afforded the privilege, if I may, Mr. Speaker, to say a few words to my people.
But member from the 4th, a decision has been made on that request. You wasn't clear on the decision?
Mr. Speaker, while I know you have the authority to make a decision of such a nature, Mr. Speaker, can I finish speaking, Mr. Speaker, please?
No, you can't.
Mr. Speaker, while I know you have the authority to make a decision.
Member, I'm on my feet.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, it's your authority and I will sit, but I think you can still reconsider, Mr. Speaker.
Deputy Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of information, if I can't speak, I will walk outside and speak to the press, but please allow me to speak, Mr.
Member
Speaker.
for the 4th District, in keeping with what occurred on March 12th, when 11 members were sworn in, there was an order of the day. They all had to wait until other business to speak. Why should we give you special privilege now, 4 months later?
Mr. Speaker, I'm not asking special privilege.
Well, it's special privilege.
I'm
All
pointing out, Mr.
members
Speaker,
in this
on
chambers.
that day, the only business of the day was swearing in. Today, Mr. Speaker, I've been sworn in, and right after the others were sworn in...
This House is in recess. Please be seated. This House is back in session. I call on the Deputy Clerk.
Statements by ministers.
I call on the Premier and Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have a few statements, and one is dealing with the situation in terms of the House agreement to swear in the representative of the fort. Mr. Speaker, the last general election held on the 25th February 2019 was significant in many respects. There were many unpredictable and unprecedented developments. Never before had 4 parties with at least one incumbent member contested an election in our political history. Out of the 13 successful candidates, 6 had contested the election for the very first time in their political careers. It was the first time that we used electronically tabulated voting as opposed to the traditional method of manual counting. It was a fierce contested election that resulted in an overwhelming mandate from the people of the Virgin Islands for the Virgin Islands Party, which won 8 of the 13 elected seats. Another unpredictable and unprecedented development, however, was the immediate resignation by a successful candidate. I refer, of course, to Mr. Mark Vanderpool, who was elected as a member of Parliament for the 4th Electoral District. Mr. Vanderpool submitted his resignation by letter dated 5th March 2019 to the Clerk of the House and advised that he did not wish to be sworn in as a member of this House. He then issued a statement on his personal Facebook page apologizing to his constituents and committee members. he followed up with a video blog explaining that he had resigned due to personal reasons. He did not condescend to say what those personal reasons were. It was therefore no surprise to anyone when Mr. Vanderpool did not show up for the swearing-in of members in this House, which took place on 12 March 2019. After all, this was consistent with his stated intention and action. By letter dated 14 March 2019, Mr. Vanderpool appeared to have had a change of heart and indicated to the Speaker that he now wished to be sworn in as a member. Naturally, this created a constitutional crisis, as Mr. Vanderpool was now seeking to question the validity of his own personal resignation, which had been duly accepted by the Speaker. The betrayal of the people of the 4th District was a serious matter. When you stand for election in the Westminster system, you do not offer yourself as a government minister or opposition member. You simply offer yourself to be the elected representative of the people of that district in the House, regardless of the outcome of the election. That decision could never be contingent only upon your party winning and forming the government, or your being appointed as a government minister. The Constitution and the Westminster system does not allow for conditional candidates who run based on certain outcomes and conditions that meet with their personal favor. Coming on the heels of the sudden resignation of Mr. Myron Walman's resignation as chairman of the National Democratic Party, Mr. Vanderpool's conduct therefore created a dangerous political precedent. The people felt betrayed because their representative has suddenly abandoned them after the election results were known because his party did not form the government. In other words, his offering himself as a candidate appeared to be conditional upon him being in government. Let us be frank about it. That was the perception. The validity of Mr. Vanderpool's resignation was a subject of legal challenge. He first filed a claim for judicial review, which was dismissed. He then filed a constitutional claim which succeeded and was a subject of an appeal. We were in uncharted constitutional waters, and there was a divergence of opinion among the legal experts. It was felt that judicial guidance should be obtained on this gray area of the Constitution, which raised the important question on how a member should exercise his undoubted right of resignation before a Speaker is elected. It should be noted that our Constitution is unique in this regard, as no similar right of resignation exists in England. Whilst there was merit is the view that we should clarify the law in the public interest, it was a matter of concern to me that the people of the 4th District remain without a voice in the House, and the legal wrangling could be quite protracted. The voice of the people is the voice of God. It is said, and the sanctity of the democratic will of the people was of supreme importance. I therefore thought long and hard about my decision to approach the Honorable Speaker and ask that Mr. Vanderpool be allowed to take the oath and be sworn in as a member of this august House. In balancing the scales of public justice, I consider the fact that the guiding light in my political philosophy has always been to put the people first. It is my overriding responsibility and objective. I trust the people and respect their will and intelligence. They will have the opportunity to judge the actions and conduct of their representatives. They will articulate how they feel about the implacable resignation of a man who pleaded for their vote and then abandoned them after the catalytic shift in power to a new government revealed itself. They will let Mr. Vanderpool and this House know whether they felt betrayed and deceived because of his resignation, his public videos on social media, and his sudden volte-face. The ultimate power and final say resides in the hands of the people when they exercise their right to make that almighty X, or take or shade, to elect their representative. It would have been easy to succumb to the political temptation to allow this matter to run its meandering journey through the courts in search of a legal resolution in response to the serious constitutional and political problem triggered by Mr. Vanderpool's resignation and his subsequent drive to serve. But it's my responsibility to make decisions that will put country and people above politics and personality. The people of this territory voted for change, and I consider it my sacred and solemn duty to respond to that call. The need to have this House properly constituted with a full complement of members that reflects the democratic will and voice of the people is my predominant and primary concern. We hold power at the behest of the people. We hold power in trust because of the people. And we must hence exercise that power for the benefit of the people. It is to the people that we must all return to seek political and constitutional validation. For they are our true masters, and we, their mere servants. John F. Kennedy once observed that, and I quote, "The Chinese use two brush strokes to write the word crisis. One brush stroke stands for danger, the other for opportunity. In a crisis, be aware of the danger, but recognize the opportunity." End of quote. Today, I say let us embrace the opportunity to complete the configuration of the Honorable House, show the world that our constitutional democracy is alive and well. I am proud to lead a government that has risen to the occasion and placed constitutional and democratic morality at the helm of its philosophy. Our people have asserted their belief in a democratic system and institutions that are founded upon principles that acknowledge the supremacy of God, faith, and moral and spiritual values. I therefore say that the time has come for us to put the past behind us and join hands so that we can confront the challenges we face as a united parliament in the best interest of the people. I wish to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for being open to suasion and for being so considerate and receptive to the overtures made by myself and my friend, the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, and making today possible. You have served this Honorable House well and enhanced the integrity of your office. I welcome Mr. Vanderpool to this Honorable House and look forward to his contributions. May God forever bless the people of these beautiful Virgin Islands. May God save the Queen.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I have another statement.
Sure, Premier. Proceed.
This one is a little in-depth. Mr. Speaker, this one is entitled, "The State of the BVI Airports Authority." Mr. Speaker, I rise to report to this Honorable House on the state of affairs at the BVI Airports Authority, known as BVI-AA. I'm not here just to speak about our ills, but when the people voted for this government, they voted for a government that will fix the problems.
1 second, Premier. Sergeant at Arms, please restore order in the gallery. We're not accepting any disruption of this proceeding. My apologies, Premier. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to report to this Honorable House on the state of affairs at the BVI Airports Authority, BVI-AA. I am not here just to speak about our ills, but when the people voted for this government, they voted for a government that will fix the problems. Before you can fix a problem, you must first know what caused the problem in the first place so that you can treat it at the source and not apply band-aids to the symptoms. If you only treat the symptoms, then the real problem will never go away. The people of this territory must be kept aware of the challenges this government met and the solutions that this government is working on. The situation at the BVI Airports Authority, Mr. Speaker, is beyond catastrophic. And it is one that will require critically urgent interventions to prevent the collapse of our territory's key economic drivers. Mr. Speaker, in the 1 month that the new board of the BVI Airport Authority has been in place, they have uncovered a rabbit hole of mismanagement, deception, profligacy, and quite possibly misappropriation of millions of dollars of taxpayers' money. I call it a rabbit hole, Mr. Speaker, because it just keeps getting deeper and deeper, twisting and turning in unexpected and startling ways, as if it was some kind of wonderland. Even more concerning is the fact that there have not been any audited financial statements from 2014 to present, even though it is required that financials be submitted to the central government 6 months after the end of the previous financial year. The authority's financial condition is in shambles. There's a serious cash flow problem, and close to $1 million is owing in outstanding bills. How a board, management, and a government could have allowed these things to happen with such a critical piece of our transportation network is beyond understanding. Were they in the dark? Did they know and bury their heads in the sand? Or did they know and were helpless? Mr. Speaker, on May 15, 2019, Cabinet approved the appointment of the new board of the BVI Airports Authority effective 24 May 2019. The members of the board are Mr. Bevel Sylvester, Chairman, and members Mrs. Marlon Chukutu, Sr., and Kelvin Hodge, and Mrs. Patsy Lake for a period of 3 years, and Mr. Hippolito Diego Pen, Theodore Bork, Raul Sprav, and Mrs. Judy Ann Aldona Smith for a period of 2 years. The ex-officio members are Managing Director, BVI Airport Authority Executive Director, Financial Secretary, Director of Tourism, and Permanent Secretary for the Premier's Office, for whom the subject is housed. Mr. Speaker, the authority's then Managing Director, Mr. Denison Fraser, on June 11, invited the board to meet and greet with the general staff at the authority. I'm advised that the staff and the board had a very warm and pleasant interaction and set the tone for healthy communication in the future. Also present at the meeting was the Director of Operations, Mr. Coy Levens. Mr. Fraser gave the new board various briefs with respect to the organization and where it was. 2 days later, Mr. Fraser suddenly proceeded into retirement. He had given notice to the previous board of his intention to retire in October 2018, and the then board had asked him to hold on. Mr. Fraser's departure, with Mr. Fraser's departure, Mr. Levens has been appointed Acting Managing Director. Mr. Clive Smith, who was a duty manager, is now Acting Director of Operations. The positions of Managing Director, Deputy Managing Director, Director of Operations, and Duty Manager are currently being advertised. Critical issues for attention. Mr. Speaker, some of the issues that were flagged as urgent by Mr. Fraser in his briefings to the board are the runway extension. In 2007, the board commissioned Louis Berger to do a strategic master plan for the airport. Louis Berger produced a plan with 5 runway options. Option 4 was recommended by Louis Berger as this, on the face of it, calls for a smoother transition to land, reorientation of the runway. The then board, however, appointed a local team, the Airport Development Committee, ADC, to evaluate the options from Louis Berger. The ADC, however, recommended a new option dubbed Option 6. This option called for the extension to the east by approximately 2,000 feet and west by 500 feet. The board was visited by Ramon Miro of ADC and Haas of Texas, who proposed to invest, develop, and operate the TV Letsom International Airport for a specific term, after which the operation and assets would revert to the authority. This offer was declined as this was not part of the then minister's agenda. Between 2012 and 2016, the government made a commitment to extend the runway at Beef Island. At that time, the government was interested in financiers to finance and develop the airport. A project manager was appointed. The Ministry of Natural Resources and Labor continued searching for a financier to build the runway. Over 15 expressions of interest were received. Requests for proposals went out, and a list of 4 preferred firms was advanced for consideration. After months of deliberation, it was reported that the government had selected a bidder for the proposed airport expansion project. After spending millions, the project fell through. Money wasted. Mr. Speaker, the Premier's office is still waiting on the full report and all documents from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Labor, including relevant resolutions by the BVI Airports Authority Board, with respect to all the money spent by the ministry from 2012 to 2018 on the expansion project, but the ministry has not yet replied. In late 2017, the then chairman announced that the government had officially terminated the process with the bidders for the expansion project and had charged the authority with taking over and setting up a project scope. WSP was chosen as a consultant to spearhead this transition. WSP's contract was formally placed on hold in January 2019. Runway rehabilitation loans. Mr. Speaker, the monies allocated for the maintenance of the runway proved to be an area of serious concern to the new members of the board. In 2017, prior to the devastating hurricanes, the sum of $5 million was loaned by the government to the BVI Airports Authority for rehabilitation of the runway at Beef Island. This money was not spent on resurfacing the runway, but on salaries and operational expenses. I am advised that the authority did not write to the government to notify the government that the funds were not used for the intended purpose and to explain how, where, and why the money had been redirected as is required. In the meantime, the runway continued deteriorating. In 2018, the authority was placed on notice by Air Safety Support International, ASSI, regarding the runway friction, which had dropped below acceptable levels. I am advised, Mr. Speaker, that the BVI Airports Authority was threatened with restrictions that would have affected the usable length of the runway, and this would have prevented some of the main airlines that operate at the Terence B. Lettsome International Airport from landing and taking off. Airlift to the BVI would have been shut down. This forced the authorities' hand to address the problem and give the government no choice but to provide funds in the form of a second loan to the BVI Airports Authority in the sum of $5.5 million. The form of BCQS was procured by the authority to implement a tendering process for the resurfacing of the runway. Resurfacing was completed and grooving of the entire runway was concluded and handed over to the authority in June 2019. The cost of this work was $5.5 million, which was funded by the second loan just mentioned from the central government. Mr. Speaker, it is very troubling to learn that when management met with the board in June, attempts were made to pull the wool over their eyes and convince the board that these two sums, $5 million and $5.5 million, were not loans but grants. This attempt to mislead the new board was thwarted by the presence of the financial secretary, who sits as an ex officio member of the board and who was able to confirm that the authority is obligated to repay these sums. Thank God for checks and balances. Suffice it to say, Mr. Speaker, key pieces of documentation cannot be found. Board resolutions concerning the $5 million from 2017 cannot be found to date. Insurance. Mr. Speaker, the authority's insurance coverage is another source of nightmares. Before the hurricanes, the authority was insured with Caribbean Insurance, a broker which had reinsured the authority's interest with a company called Real Legacy in Puerto Rico. The authority was paid $2.25 million from a hurricane damage claim of $21 million. We will come back to this in a minute, Mr. Speaker. After much back and forth with Caribbean Insurance, the authority was informed that Real Legacy filed for bankruptcy and is in the process of liquidation. This was unfortunate as the BVI Airports Authority was offered $9 million previously, but was advised to allow World Claims to attend to the matter in hopes of getting a larger amount. The insurance for the airport was advertised for tender in October 2017. There were no takers. Meanwhile, Caribbean Insurance extended the coverage for 3 months until the end of March 2019. Permission was granted to allow Willis Towers Watson to take over the insurance for the airport. In a recent meeting, Mr. Anthony Phillips from Willis Towers indicated that there may be some hope for the authority in recovering the funds from Lloyd's of London, the reinsurers for Real Legacy. He stated that he is willing to work with the authority and with the government of Puerto Rico to try to obtain $9 million for the insurers, from the insurers. At the moment, the authority's insurance premium has increased by over $400,000, going from $245,000 to $664,000. There has been no tendering for this service. The authority intends to put the insurance coverage out for tender to get better value for money for the people of the Virgin Islands. With respect to the $2.25 million that was deposited in November 2018, arising out of the claims after the 2017 storms, I am advised, Mr. Speaker, that these funds were not applied to repairing the facilities, but used instead for salaries and operational expenses. Works and Administration Building at the BVI Airports Authority. Mr. Speaker, after the 2017 storms, the administration building, which has approximate dimension of 100 feet by 50 feet, and which primarily housed the administration and finance departments, sustained significant damage. This resulted in the staff being displaced and housed in temporary office spaces in the terminal building. They remain in the haphazard arrangement today, even after hundreds of thousands of dollars were spent on repairing the administration building by the previous board, management, and the ministry with responsibility for the airport at that time. Mr. Speaker, let me explain what happened. The authority, under the previous board and previous government, issued a contract for repairs in the sum of $225,000 to a contractor. The scope of this work included a reconstruction of the roof in concrete and use of concrete wall blocks inside instead of sheetrock. The logic was that in the event of the windows being blown off during a severe weather event, the concrete block walls would not have to be replaced, whereas the sheetrock walls would be damaged. Just before the February general elections, the previous board and management issued a variation of the contract in the sum of an additional $48,000. The cause of this 21.33% contract variation cannot be sufficiently explained. May I say that there are no copies of board resolutions to support the issue of the contract and the variation. I am also advised that the plans have no approval from the building authority. But it gets worse, Mr. Speaker. The contractor left no provisions inside the walls for electrical and installations. Now the authority must face additional costs for boring the walls to conceal and secure the electrical wiring, or they must use sheetrock to create a facade to conceal the electrical wiring. This is after the deliberate decision to use blocks instead of sheetrock. Again, the records do not show that the contract was approved by the then board. The new board has advised that they have found estimates and other project documents in relation to this project, and these show that the remainder of work required to complete the repairs to this 100 by 50 building is $650,000. This would take the total for the repairs to this small building, inclusive of the unexplained variation, beyond $1 million, which is triple what the cost was initially assumed to be. In the meantime, the employees are subjected to difficult working conditions. Rajagaha Airport issues. Mr. Speaker, the BVI Airport Authority Board visited the Rajagaha Airport last Sunday, and they met an appalling situation there. 1, no AC. The board found that there was no air conditioning at the airport. They were advised that the authority was delinquent in paying its electricity bill, and the Electricity Corporation took a decision not to install a transformer, which cost about $46,000 on account of their arrears. I'm advised that the newly appointed Airports Authority Board appealed to the BVI Electricity Corporation on Sunday, and the BVI Electricity Corporation has indicated a willingness to revisit the situation to find an amicable resolution. 2, poor roads and runway. Mr. Speaker, the access road leading up the arrival area is unsuitable for a country that is serious about welcoming tourist visitors. The authority wishes to resurface these roads before the start of the next tourist season. An estimate is being sought. It should be noted that the runway at Virgin Gorda is a dirt surface. Asphalt paving of the runway requires some $2.5 million US. 3, fire station garage. Mr. Speaker, the fire truck at the Virgin Gorda Airport remains exposed to the elements during the day. Some time ago, a contract was issued for construction of a garage for the sum of $89,000. Somewhere along the line, a variation was done to add an office and a watchtower to the contract for additional $127,000. According to advice given to the board, there was a disagreement at the management level over this variation, and the contractor halted work. The work remains incomplete, and there's no garage for securing the fire appliance. The truck is kept in the vicinity of the old fire station. However, this venue is not fit for that purpose. 4, Virgin Gorda land acquisition. Mr. Speaker, currently the apron on the airport in Virgin Gorda is limited in size and is a potential safety hazard. The BVI Airport Authority has been wanting to purchase the land adjacent to the airport, and after approximately 5 years of negotiations with the owners, one of the 3 siblings agreed to sell his portion for $200,000. This agreement is yet to be finalized. Hangars. Mr. Speaker, the hangars at the Beef Island were all destroyed during the storm in 2017. Of the 3 leases that existed prior, one was held by the now infamous BV Airways, the company that flew away with our $7.2 million taxpayer dollars under the previous government and never operated a single commercial flight to date. Through Sable's law, that lease was acquired by the BVI Airport Authority due to BVI/BVI Airways breach of contract. The other 2 leases surrendered their leases. The authority has been proceeding on a course to rebuild 5 hangars based on a master plan. This requires an amalgamation of the parcels of land. A survey was completed and Sable's law was able to apply for amalgamation. The authority is now awaiting approval from the land registry for combining the parcels, after which the surveyor will subdivide and reassignment of parcels can be done. However, 4 new potential clients have expressed interest in hangar facilities, which means if the current plan is followed, the authority will be declining the business of 2 clients who are willing to pay for services. The board believes this should be avoided and is re-examining its option for managing the hangar situation so that no one loses. An estimate for rebuilding the hangars is to be determined. Cost-cutting recommendations. Mr. Speaker, the new board was advised by Mr. Fraser's management team that the following cost-cutting measures could be considered. The new board has promised to consider these options, but also seek alternative measures that will do no harm to our loyal employees and customers. 1, firefighters. In December 2011, it was recommended that the firefighters should be transferred to central government. The current structure costs the authority over $1 million per annum and is threatening to undermine the financial viability of the organization. 2, custodian and maintenance units. The new board was also asked by Mr. Fraser to consider outsourcing the custodian and maintenance units, which could realize savings of at least $50,000 for custodian and $90,000 for maintenance. The cost implications for these services currently stands at $140,000. This is one area in which the board will be searching for alternative solutions that will not adversely affect the workers. 3, air navigation services. Mr. Speaker, I am advised that the authority pursued an agreement with an independent provider for air navigation services. Currently, a monthly charge of $11,000 is paid to the Eastern Caribbean Civil Aviation Authority, ECCAA, for the provision of air navigation services. The authority has begun sorting communications, and there's a potential for $6,000 per month saving if these discussions are successful. Major items for immediate purchase. Mr. Speaker, in order for the authority to maintain regulatory compliance, there are some major capital items that need to be purchased almost immediately. 1, 2 fire tenders. Regulatory compliance requires each fire station to have a fully functional fire tender at the station to accommodate the airport's category. The fire station at Beef Island Station requires 2 new tenders as the current tenders are outdated and falling apart. This is required to ensure that the regulatory compliance is maintained and will cost approximately $1.6 million. 2, new tower console. The console currently used in the control tower is outdated and in dire need of replacement, the cost of which is approximately $500,000. 3, control tower elevation. The control tower sits at the top of an 8-story building. As such, it is necessary for a fully functioning elevator system at all times to allow a smooth and efficient transit by air traffic controllers and other authorized persons. The current elevator at the control tower is approximately 10 years old and is maintained every 3 months by a St. Lucia-based company. This elevator, however, seemed to be faulty. A replacement cost of $75,000 was sourced by the authority. May I point out, Mr. Speaker, last week, the new BVI Airports Authority chairman and 2 other board members attempted to visit the control tower, and the elevator broke down with them inside. They were trapped for 45 minutes, and they have not been able to conduct their visit to the tower. 4, conveyor belt and updated X-ray machine at whole baggage screening. The conveyor belt and X-ray machine at the whole baggage screening HBS area sustained significant damage during the 2017 storms. A temporary machine is currently being used to carry out the daily duties. The replacement cost of the conveyor belt and X-ray machine is approximately $900,000. 5, redefining airspace. It is imperative that the airspace in the territory be redefined to include all the sovereign islands. A study was done on this approximately 10 years ago, which highlighted that a redefinition would cost approximately $900,000. This is required as aircraft are landing on Anegada without communication with the control tower at Beef Island, since Anegada is outside of the controlled airspace, and this renders communication with Beef Island as not necessary. This, Mr. Speaker, also presents a serious national security risk. Anegada has no customs and immigration checkpoints, and what is happening at present is that persons are flying into Anegada without the knowledge of the authority, customs, or immigration, and then those persons are using ferries as domestic travelers to move from one island to the next. This situation can facilitate illegal drugs, undesirable persons, and contraband entering our territory. Furthermore, it deprives the territory of the opportunity to collect the $10 environmental fee and duties on goods as applicable. 6, security officers training. Mr. Speaker, in the last assessment examination for security officers, 35 officers failed. This is not good. But in order to remedy this situation, security training modules are required. The cost of this is $40,000 US. Financial status of the authority. With respect to the financial status of the authority, the board advises 1. The BVI Airports Authority's accounts payable currently stands at $954,000, just below $1 million. This is the amount being owed to vendors. 2, the accounts receivable is just over $2.6 million. The authority has not been effectively collecting the revenue due to it so that it can honor its obligations on a timely basis. Payments are being made on a per demand basis. 3, the authority's monthly commitments total just over $700,000. Salaries account for just over $500,000 of this figure. Overall, number 4, overall expenditure patterns are not in line with any prudent financial management systems and standards. And thus, Mr. Speaker, we continue to slip further and further down the rabbit hole at the BVI Airports Authority. But the way forward. Mr. Speaker, since taking office, the new board has met 5 times and has met with several stakeholders to get input and ideas for how they can collaborate to turn things around in the interest of the people of the territory. This includes taxi drivers, airlines, and employees. The board is looking at reorganizing and restructuring the authority and its operation and trimming off some of the excess. Mr. Speaker, the BVI Airports Authority's procurement methods were unsatisfactory. The authority had no official procurement policy. A draft policy which was prepared in 2014 was not formally adopted and is past due for review. The board is moving to promptly develop and implement a procurement policy that will be in conformity with the government's policies. Additionally, the board has approved a resolution to have a forensic audit conducted at the authority to examine the pattern of high spending with lack of approval and absence of accountability. That investigation will commence in 2 weeks and should tell all citizens where their money has gone, and in the event that any questionable acts is found, who is responsible and how they should be dealt with. The board has also indicated that given its tenuous cash flow situation, the mountain of debt owed to suppliers, and the urgent need to complete very costly repairs and upgrades to the facilities to retain our international certification, they are sending out an SOS for urgent emergency government assistance. The sums being requested are itemized below. I will read the item and the proposed cost. Insurance, $664,000. Administration building repairs at the airport, $650,000. 2 fire tenders, $1,600,000. New control tower console, $500,000. Control tower elevator, $75,000. Conveyor belt and updated X-ray machine, $900,000. Redefining of airspace, $900,000. Security training modules, $40,000. Vajingada Airport Fire Station Garage, $127,000. Vajingada Land Acquisition, $200,000. Paving of Rajagaha Runway, $2.5 million. Custodian and maintenance services, $140,000. Air navigation services, $11,000. Total needed to get our airport up to par as of this moment with just those items, total $8,307,000. This total of $8.307 million does not include, 1, the cost of rebuilding the hangars, for which an estimated cost is still to be determined. 2, the administrative costs if the firefighters are not transferred to central government. 3, the cost of resurfacing the access road and arrival areas at the Vajingada Airport. And 4, repayment of the $10.5 million in loans from the central government in 2017 and 2018. Given the authority's current financial state, it will be necessary for the authority and the government to come up with a new revised repayment schedule. It should also be noted that staff are still to receive their increments from 2016. Mr. Speaker, as with so many other things left mishandled by the previous administration, our new government will have to rearrange our national development priorities and attend to this situation. We will have to find the money to keep the airports running. This is an emergency. It cannot be ignored or treated lightly. Mr. Speaker, as soon as information is available on how this situation is to be addressed, this Honorable House will be advised accordingly. Further, the board and management are in the process of preparing a new strategic plan that is aimed at creating new opportunities for generating increased revenue, inclusive of non-aeronautical revenue streams which were never properly developed and pursued by the past administrations of the BVI Airport Authority. The board hopes to present this new plan in the near future. Inter-island airport development fee. Mr. Speaker, this is a perfect example of this fee. What happens, Mr. Speaker, when government doesn't do its work? Then all regular citizens or hard-working citizens end up having to be paying for mismanagement. And Mr. Speaker, before I close, as I speak on the inter-island airport development fee, there is one last thing in this vein. The BVI Airport Board has looked at the $5 inter-island airport development fee that is charged to persons traveling from Anegada and Virgin Gorda to Tortola. It is a view of the board that this fee places an unfair and unnecessary burden on our sister islanders, who have no choice but to travel to Tortola in order to conduct business, shopping, and so forth. The board proposes to disband this fee to Anegadians and Virgin Gordians. Some may say it is not much, but it is our way of saying to our sister islanders that we recognize the challenges they face and we appreciate them. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, situation reports with respect to the BVI Ports Authority and all other statutory boards will be forthcoming to this Honorable House in the not-too-distant future, along with a recommendation to fix any problems that are detected, because there have been many problems that we have encountered, Mr. Speaker, that we have to bring the people up to speed with. And we are there, and they put us there to find the solutions. Mr. Speaker, that is why this government will not be distracted by the shenanigans of anyone. The problems left behind are real. The monies to fix them, Mr. Speaker, are significant and they must be found. So I understand, Mr. Speaker, why there will be noise to sidetrack this government. The public must know what we meant when we took office and our plans to solve the many problems and our proactive plans for the way forward. I take no pride in bringing these kinds of reports to the people of the Virgin Islands. But for us to fix the Virgin Islands, we must be honest and forthright with the facts and then the solutions. This course of action is what is expected from all boards so that we can move into a productive and prosperous Virgin Islands where transparency, accountability, and good governance is the norm rather than the exception. Please note that the same holds true for each ministry in central government. Productivity must be the order of the day in our Virgin Islands. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Premier, Minister of Finance, and Member for the First District, for your statement. Is there any other statements from ministers? I recognize the Deputy Premier.
Because I've heard of these allegations about the port and so on, the Honourable Premier continues to speak about, and in his statement, invite me back into the House. It was coined and cushioned and cajoled, I may say, with the statement that I need to come to the House to answer for the millions of dollars that are missing from the Port Authority development. I want to let the Honourable Premier Minister of Finance know that at any point he can do an audit, any point he can investigate, any point he can let this... Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, do I have the floor or do I have the floor? Do I have the floor or do I have the floor? I'm on a point of information.
He has mentioned things that was not said. And nobody in here can say that I said those things. Mr. Speaker, this is the kind of sidetrack game that's going to be going on.
Premier? Okay. Member from the Fort, are you finished your information?
No, and the point of information I was making, Mr. Speaker. It's a written statement that was made by the Premier. I don't know what we're talking about. That was made by the Premier about allegations that I must come to the House to account for monies in the port.
When did he say that? Just now in his statement?
Mr. Speaker, it's a written statement. And I say I don't have a problem with the investigation.
I'm trying to follow you. You're accusing the Premier of some allegations. Where was these allegations made? In this Honourable House? We cannot account for what happened outside this House, sir.
Speaker, come on, Mr. Speaker, please. As a member of this House, and when I come in this House to represent the people, I'm in here to represent whatever is said anywhere by any member of this
Yeah,
House.
but you were reacting to the Premier's statement.
I was making a point of information about boards that the Premier was speaking about, and I used the other part that was talked about with the board, the Port Authority board, Mr. Speaker. I wasn't disputing anything. I am saying that a public statement was made, and at whatever time you want to investigate the port and want to have an audit on the port, and in fact, Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Premier Minister of Finance's Chief Advisor, Claude Klein, can give him the big binder he gave me about the port development, everything in there that we want to know.
Okay, Honourable Member, thank you very much for the information.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for
Yeah. I recognize the Deputy Premier, Minister for Transportation.
Point of information, Mr. Speaker.
Premier.
While I have to respect the members' point of information, those are intentional sidetracks. Those were not mentioned today. The port of BVI Port Authority was not mentioned today. And Mr. Speaker, I can't be dealing with what a member here. If he has something that he said, that I said, and he has it, bring it. We're not going to come in the house here with allegations, and nobody going to sidetrack us. And Mr. Speaker, yes, the port, every statutory body I said today will be fully audited. That is the prerogative of the government. I'm not going to take these side shows, Mr. Speaker.
Your point. Member for the fourth. Member for the fourth. You are not recognized. Member from the fourth. I have not recognized you.
Thank you, Mr.
Please take your seat. Thank you very much. At this point, I'm going to recognize the Deputy Premier and Minister for Transportation. Member from the fourth.
It's the House.
If I have to speak to you, then you'll have to leave this chamber.
Yeah, but Mr. Speaker,
I said clearly you were not recognized. When a member is not recognized, it means that they can't speak. It's in the standing order. I'm not here trying to exert my power. It's in the standing order. You're a veteran member of this House. You should be teaching us about the standing order. You are not recognized. I'm recognizing now the Deputy Premier, Minister for Transportation, Works and Utilities, and member for the 5th District, the Honorable Kai M. Riley. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to report to this Honorable House on the progress of my ministerial portfolio since I took office, the Ministry of Transportation, Works and Utilities, formerly known as Communications and Works. It is responsible for several key departments, units, and statutory bodies. Mr. Speaker, key policy areas being addressed are addressing the current legislation and the importation of motorcycles over 125cc engine size so the limit can be increased. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to report that a draft cabinet paper is in circulation and will be presented to Cabinet shortly, seeking approval for the official drafting of amendments to the relevant legislation. Revamping the public transportation system, more specifically, the community bus system, so that a reliable and affordable means of transportation can be in place for island-wide coverage on Territorial. Once this pilot is successful, we intend to model it on Virgin Gorda as the first sister island to follow. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to report that I led a delegation to our sister overseas territory, Bermuda. This trip, Mr. Speaker, was arranged to experience and gather information behind the 70-year history of their public bus transportation services, along with their daily operations, pros and cons of having such a system, and the benefit to their community. I must report that my findings from this trip have provided much useful insight on the way forward with improving the BVI's public transportation service. Mr. Speaker, in the near future, the people of the Virgin Islands can expect to see the completion of signs and bus stop shelters across the island as we seek to partner with the private sector and other non-profit organizations and move towards creating a multimodal transportation network in the BVI. Taxi and Livery Commission. Mr. Speaker, critical to the success of these Virgin Islands is our transportation for hire industry. This industry is currently being regulated by the Taxi and Livery Commission, comprised of a secretariat, board, and director. The Commission is not without its challenges given the financial constraints. However, I must acknowledge the efforts of Mr. Damian Percival, who has served as director since 2012 and will demit office at the end of month, this July. We have embarked on a series of meetings with the operators who are the biggest stakeholders in the industry. Mr. Speaker, there continues to be issues which are easy to fix once our operators commit to working in a professional, unified environment where they not only give their best to the passengers they transport, but respect their fellow operators. In the era we are in, Mr. Speaker, may I remind the operators that both the good and the bad make it around the world via social media. So let us always put our best foot forward. Rehabilitation of the Palm Grove Shopping Center. Mr. Speaker, the area where the Palm Grove Shopping Center used to be leaves a void in the heart of our capital. However, I am proud to announce that the public can expect to see publicized a request for expressions of interest in the coming days, asking for persons to formally submit their interests to partner with the government of the Virgin Islands to rebuild a modern Palm Grove shopping center, mass transit parking facility. Further, Mr. Speaker, my ministry is preparing tender documents to build a mass parking facility which will be located at the festival grounds and which will accommodate up to 270 vehicles. Mr. Speaker, it is important to note the August Festival Village and the parking lot will coexist. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, an affordable shuttle service will be put in place to shuttle residents into town from the festival grounds. Mr. Speaker, the aim of this project is to reduce the parking congestions in the capital as we aim to make the capital a more pedestrian-friendly city while promoting ease of movement for all people. Public Works Department. Mr. Speaker, the Public Works Department is actively changing its organizational model to be a more proactive agency. Mr. Speaker, the department, in conjunction with my ministry, is developing programs that will progressively improve the territory's infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, preparations has begun to conduct a comprehensive analysis towards raising and widening of sidewalks throughout Rural Town while improving the drainage. Mr. Speaker, the Public Works, in conjunction with the Disaster Management Department, will be developing an improved pre-disaster and post-disaster response model. Mr. Speaker, this model will outline for the department steps to be taken to ready the territory's infrastructure for the seasonal weather changes such as hurricanes and rainy seasons. Mr. Speaker, this is all with the aim of having the road networks ready to manage excess water and develop preventative programs to mitigate avoidable damage such as undermining to our road network. It is our intention to manage and delegate the resources according to the known needs to minimize and reduce damage to the road network by ensuring that guts and drains, etc., are cleared, flow in, and accommodate their peak volumes at all times. Public Works Department has taken considerable steps in continuing to be the government's main technical advisor in relations to the infrastructure of the territory since the new government took office in February 2019. There is still more to be done at Public Works as we strive to improve the road network, guts, and bridges, maintain existing building structures, and design and develop new structures that are more resilient to the effects of climate change while functioning to their design capacity. Some of the efforts made that are key and worthy to mention are the government of the Virgin Islands, currently in negotiation with a local supplier to purchase an asphalt plant that is environmentally friendly, durable, and long-lasting, that will include the manufacturer's warranties that can meet the demands of the territory and complement the current private entity. Road and bridge rehabilitation. Mr. Speaker, as we move forward with the rehabilitation of road and bridge infrastructure, the Public Works Department, through my ministry, has engaged engineers to begin the designing of critical infrastructure throughout the territory. And just to name a few, I mentioned Just Van Dyke, the Back Road Rehabilitation and Drainage Solution, Dog Hole Road Rehabilitation, road undermining on the main roads and drainage solution, and Mr. Speaker, the design of preventative measures. Mr. Speaker, funding has been made available for Just Van Dyke, and works on some of these areas will begin in 2019. On Virgin Gorda, we have Nail Bay Road Rehabilitation and Drainage Solution. And Mr. Speaker, I'm awaiting the cost implication on this urgent matter, and I will provide an update on possible funding to engage this project. Lee Road. Mr. Speaker, I have asked my team to accelerate the long outstanding completion of the Lee Road overlay and drain covering. And Territorial, we have the Ballast Bay Road and Bridge. Mr. Speaker, the designs are completed. I am now awaiting the pricing cost implication with the intent to tender these works in this year 2019. Frenchman's Key Bridge. Mr. Speaker, my team has begun the preliminary work such as scheduling the environmental impact study, the geotechnical works, and funding has been requested in the 2020 budget estimates. The exercise for project execution, while preparatory works have begun. Sidewalk restoration and drainage between Roadtown Port to McNamara Junction. Mr. Speaker, preliminary designs for this project are completed, and I expect to have completed designs and costing within the next few weeks, after which the project will be executed later this year. Mr. Speaker, this project will represent a small portion of the government's Roadtown improvement plans. Mr. Speaker, these are a few of the major infrastructural works that the Ministry of Transportation Works and Utilities are actively progressing towards mobilization in 2019 and in early 2020. Windy Hill Road. Mr. Speaker, the Windy Hill Road is now reopened for motoring access. Mr. Speaker, I also acknowledge that there are more rehabilitative work to be done on that stretch of road, and I will give more updates in this regard. Fire and rescue. Mr. Speaker, the fire headquarters has undergone extensive repairs to the roof, internal structures, and replacement of windows and doors following the storms of 2017. For this phase of work, the handover of the keys to the Chief Fire Officer will take place in the coming days. Mr. Speaker, the next phase of the works on the fire headquarters is to address the barracks on the second floor and the bay where the appliances are housed. This external structure has been deemed unsound and reconstruction is required. This I intend to advance in the 2020 budget. I must make mention that fundings will be also sought to have the exterior walls of the fire station, which was excluded in the contract, painted in the near future. BVI Electricity Corporation. Mr. Speaker, I wish to provide a report conveying the details surrounding the cause of the total system shutdown, the blackout, which occurred on Friday, June 28, 2019 at 9:35 a.m. Mr. Speaker, the operators observed that the controlled air pressure for the B station was at a considerably low level. As per standard practice, the starting air compressor would be powered up to build the pressure to the prescribed set point. After further investigation, the operators identified a leak on Unit 11 pneumatic system due to a broken pipe. The mechanical foreman and maintenance manager were briefed on the situation and made a way to isolate the engine. However, by the time any preventative action could be taken, Unit 11 went into its emergency shutdown protocol due to the low air pressure. After Unit 11 shut down, engines number 10 and number 12 also shut down on low controlled pressure, as the air system controls all 3 units. Unit 8 was also running at that time, but the unit could not sustain the sudden loading condition due to the loss of the units in the Station B, which caused it to shut down on overloading conditions. Mr. Speaker, Unit 8 is rated at 5.5 megawatts, with Unit 10, 11, and 12, which are all rated at 8.5 megawatts each. The demand at the time of the incident was approximately 26 megawatts. The broken pipe on Unit 11 was subsequently replaced with a durable alternative air hose. Mr. Speaker, with that said, the entire transmission and distribution network was fully restored and customers regained electricity approximately 11:45 that same morning. Mr. Speaker, I have requested that further examinations be carried out on the systems and procedures to see if there is anything that can be done to prevent the reoccurrence of such service interruptions in the future. The management advised that they are currently reviewing their preventative maintenance program. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, the strides that I have just mentioned would not be possible without the hard work of the employees in the Ministry of Transportation Works and Utilities and our departments and agencies. I want to take this opportunity to recognize their hard work and to thank them for their efforts. Sometimes we get so comfortable enjoying the amenities and services that these employees provide for us that we take them for granted. Mr. Speaker, we are working on continually improving how we perform in our roles. We are making progress, and in due course, putting one foot ahead of the other, we will get even better. Mr. Speaker, I will continue to keep this Honorable House updated the best I can on the status of the work being done in my ministry and our divisions and agencies. I say thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy Premier and Minister for Transportation, Works and Utilities. And also my congratulations on your new appointment as the Deputy Premier. Is there any other statements from ministers? I recognize the Minister for Education, Culture, Youth Affairs, Fisheries, Agriculture, and member for the 7th District, Dr. the Honorable Natalio T. Whitley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your kind permission, I'll just use this opportunity to recognize my grandfather, the late great Willard Whitley, who was born on this date, July 16th, 1915. Also, my honorable colleague, Neville Smith, his birthday today. I send him birthday greetings. And I also welcome the member for the 4th District to the House of Assembly. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to address the people of the Virgin Islands. Allow me to update the public on the state of the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries. 2 weeks ago, the newly appointed Director of Agriculture and Fisheries, Theodore James, was appointed. I congratulate him for this advancement in his public service career. And this serves as a further testament to this government's commitment to provide opportunities for young persons. His appointment took longer than I expected, but I am grateful that he is now in a position to lead the resurrection of the agricultural and fisheries sector. Since being appointed minister of this subject, I recognize the need for policy support in the ministry, and I am therefore pleased to announce that Tessa Smith-Claxton will progress from her former position as Acting Director of Agriculture and Fisheries to Assistant Secretary in my ministry with responsibility for agriculture and fisheries. Her knowledge and skills will be invaluable to me as we rebuild these vital economic sectors. Having now appointed a director and having formally established policy support, I can begin to engage farmers and fishers on key issues in this revitalization mission. I will first meet with farmers, and they can expect for us to engage on a number of issues, including water, conditions for the use of Crown land, investment in the sector, the regulation of both crop and livestock, opportunities for investment in the sector, etc., coordination of crops, marketing of produce, among other things. Fishers can expect a similar meeting closely following the meeting with farmers. This concludes my statement on this matter. My next statement, Mr. Speaker, is an update on the 65th Emancipation Festival of the Virgin Islands. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to update the people of the Virgin Islands on the plans for Emancipation Festival activities, which are progressing well. The Executive Committee and various subcommittees have been working hard to ensure that we have a quality 65th festival. By now, individuals would have learned about the lineup of international and local artists who will entertain patrons of these activities, along with the various cultural activities that we will all have a chance to participate in. Much interest has been generated in this festival, and many Virgin Islanders abroad have expressed a desire to come home. Persons from neighboring islands have also shown a great deal of excitement, and we can expect a great deal of support. The finances of festival remain a concern. The committee has taken measures to generate additional revenue to support activities, as well as making efficient use of resources without compromising the quality of the events. They have centralized the administration of finances to ensure spending is under control. I will keep an eagle eye on the situation because it is an area I take very seriously. Also, I'm keen to ensure that our festivities have a strong focus on culture. I was pleased that the parade committee, under the leadership of Atli Hajj, chose to honor a number of participants in our festival. Myron Rubain, Kanisha Sprav, the Extreme Band, the Heritage Dancers, Jasmine Bruley, and the Lashing Dogs were all recognized for their contributions over the years. This is a component I would like to see remain in our slate of festival activities. Carrot Bay has always had a strong cultural component with their cultural fiesta. In addition to their customary activities, they will be having a traditional market day where local produce cultural treats will be on sale. They will have a cultural dance competition, and they will make cassava bread on site, among other activities. Eastern Langlook Festival also has a traditionally strong focus on history and culture. In addition to the annual activities, including our Emancipation Church service, we will be introducing new ways of highlighting our heritage and culture. We will have a festival of culture and praise, which will include cultural demonstrations, plaque pole, makajumbis, cultural food, fungi music, among other activities. There will also be a heritage village in Langlook as another new addition to the festivities. In Rotong, we will have 2 culture nights and the return of the Calypso competition, which will complement the cultural food fair and other ongoing cultural activities. I must mention the ongoing work of the Heritage Month Committee, which continues to honor our God and our ancestors with a Freedom March and Emancipation service, followed by a sunrise service. At the conclusion of this year's festivities, I will examine other ways in which we can strengthen the focus on heritage and culture. While things are by no means perfect, we will not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, as my premier always says. We will fix and go at the same time. Mr. Speaker, let me encourage the public never to lose sight of the true reason for these celebrations. This is not just a fete or a carnival. This is an ongoing tradition in which we recognize our ancestors' successful struggle against the vicious institution of slavery. We must praise God, dance, sing, eat, drink, and be merry in reflection of the divine favor and mercy we have benefited from since our victory over the wicked institution of slavery. Mr. Speaker, people of the Virgin Islands, may we have a safe and enjoyable festival. Mr. Speaker, my final statement will be an update on the status of schools and territorial courts. Mr. Speaker, as Minister for Education, Culture, Youth Affairs, Agriculture, and Fisheries, we are at the threshold of reopening a number of schools that were under construction since the 2017 hurricanes. Again, I must convey much gratitude to the government of the Virgin Islands and the benefactors who have played a very important role in the rebuilding of our public schools throughout the territory. Mr. Speaker, I am happy to provide an update on the public schools that are currently under construction. Mr. Speaker, the rebuilding of the Enos Adams Primary School is through the private benefactor, Mr. Peter Haycraft and family. Construction work on this school is approximately 90% completed, including all work on roof, floors, painting, and tile work. Minor works, including plumbing and electrical finishes and general cleanup, are ongoing and will be completed within the next 3 weeks. Mr. Speaker, this is one of our schools that will be completed and ready for handover in August 2019 and in time to receive students for the 2019-2020 school year. Mr. Speaker, the restoration of the L-shaped building on the campus of the Elmer Stout High School continues at a steady pace. To date, I can report that contractors have completed approximately 55% of the work toward completion. Mr. Speaker, contracts were signed for the procurement of the windows and doors, and both have been ordered. Door frames are expected to arrive on island within 2 weeks, and doors by the second week of August. The manufacturing process for windows is expected to be completed by the end of July. Mr. Speaker, roof work, electrical, and AC works are well advanced. Restroom fixtures, including partitions, toilets, urinals, and dispensers, are being currently installed. Installation of light fixtures are ongoing, as well as interior painting of classrooms, and a significant portion of external painting is completed. Mr. Speaker, providing all material arrives on island within the specified time frame, the L-shaped building should be ready for handover by September. Mr. Speaker, again, I am sure everyone can see that there's a significant amount of work completed on the building as contractors continue to work as a united team toward the completion. Mr. Speaker, we are keeping our eyes on the procurement of furniture and equipment for schools, which is currently our biggest challenge in meeting our deadlines. Mr. Speaker, the procurement of furniture and equipment was included in the CDB recovery loan, and the process is still a work in progress. Mr. Speaker, we will remain diligent and update the public with ongoing developments. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth Affairs, Fisheries, and Agriculture is currently working with the architect to finalize the revised drawings for Building 2, 3, and 4, Administration and Restroom Block at the Brigado Flax Educational Center Secondary Division Campus. Mr. Speaker, Unite BVI, the private benefactor for Building 1, is in the final stages of completion and ready to hand over the building in August 2019. Territorial courts. Mr. Speaker, the work comprises the undertaking of the resurfacing works to the Greenland and Purcell Estate basketball courts. Works were completed in the allotted time frame specified in the contract. Mr. Speaker, the work comprises the undertaking of the resurfacing works to the Capoons Bay basketball volleyball court. Works are approximately 90% completed. Mr. Speaker, the work comprises the undertaking of the resurfacing works to the Carrot Bay basketball volleyball court. Works are completed at this facility. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
I thank the Minister for Education for his statement. Just before I call on the next minister, I just want to remind members again, particularly ministers, that when you do statements, we'll need to have copies of them, so immediately after they're handed out to members and also to the press. I also want to bring members' attention to Standing Order 35, and I'm going to read it into the record. Standing Order 35 said, member desiring to speak shall rise in his place, and if called upon, shall address his observation to the Speaker or Chairman. No member shall speak unless called upon by the Speaker or Chairman. I recognize the Minister for Natural Resources and Labor, Immigration, and member for the 9th District, Honorable Vincent O. Whitley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I begin my remarks, I too want to welcome the member for the 4th to the House. Good to have you here. Being the Minister for Natural Resources, Labor, and Immigration, I will give my statements in that order per subject. Mr. Speaker, the enactment of environmental legislation in keeping with the aspirations to ensure a pristine and healthy environment is paramount to this government. Our people have enjoyed the bounty that nature has provided to us. The natural environment has sustained us and has given us food, shelter, and the material goods to feed and protect ourselves, drive our economy, and afford the beauty of our surroundings. I would dare anyone to suggest that one of the most magnificent landscapes and seascapes in the world cannot be found in these beautiful British Virgin Islands. The world-renowned Banff National Park is iconic and a source of pride of ours with no comparison. We are blessed to count it and other areas as singularly belonging to the Virgin Islands, areas that have defined and sustained us for many, many generations. Mr. Speaker, the natural environment is closely linked to our identity. Our forefathers fished and plied these waters to make a living through fishing and tourism industries. The natural assets of the Virgin Islands must be protected. They must be treasured and treated in a totally different manner so that our children and their children may enjoy it as well. While we have put in place legislation which has addressed our national parks and our fish stocks, we have not put in place overall environmental legislation which demonstrates the value of our natural environment, not only our livelihoods, but our very survival. Environmental legislation which would address the manner in which we balance the protection of the environment, conservation of our biodiversity, would control pollution and hazardous substances, and advances and promote sustainable development, which is in harmony with our environment, is long overdue, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this government prizes the natural environment and recognizes its importance to various sectors, our livelihoods, and our health. As such, we have looked at the Constitution of the Virgin Islands and taken note of the need to implement Section 29, which states that everyone has the right to an environment that is generally not harmful to his or her health and well-being, and to have the environment protected for the benefit of present and future generations. Mr. Speaker, therefore, I am pleased to inform the House that the Ministry of Natural Resources, Labor and Immigration has released a green paper on environmental management, climate adaptation, and sustainable development. This paper describes the approach that government will pursue to conserve biodiversity, more effectively manage the natural assets, control pollution and the discharge of hazardous substances, and strengthen the compliance and penalty regimes to arrest environmental degradation. Mr. Speaker, the paper is available on the government's website at bvi.gov.vg/environment. Also important to take note is the fact that we do not divorce climate adaptation and sustainable development from the broader issues we face to ensure the protection and rational use of the environment. In proposing the mechanisms for action, we take a holistic governmental approach where we recognize that our challenges must be tackled by not only our ministry, but government as a whole, the NGO and civil society and sectors and the wider community. Mr. Speaker, complementing the production of the Green Paper is a recent visit of Ambassador Diane Blacklane, who served as one of the OECS negotiators for the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement. It is in the context of partnership and the sharing of experience and approaches to adapt to impacts of climate change at the regional and national levels, that we have held a fruitful dialogue to identify areas of cooperation with the government of Antigua and Barbuda and other member states of the OECS. Mr. Speaker, government's commitment to an improved environmental management framework and enhanced partnerships with our regional counterparts to address common challenges with respect to climate adaptation and mitigation will advance the framework for the stewardship of our natural resources, which we value and treasure, and to safeguard its integrity, support livelihoods, and our economy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for that part. I'll move on to labor. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Natural Resources, Labor and Immigration continues to work diligently on the policies, procedures, and legislation of the subject areas for which we are responsible. The attention placed on the areas will allow for the full transformation of each department, allowing the ability for more technology-based and customer satisfaction-focused services to be provided. The government of the Virgin Islands is mindful of the need for labor reform and has identified it as a key component of the development of our economic pillars and our most valuable resources, our people. Mr. Speaker, the renaming of the Labor Department to the Department of Labor and Workforce Development is proof that my ministry is well on its way to fulfilling the commitment of this government to reform labor relations in our territory. The department has now shifted gears to provide for the people of the Virgin Islands improved services. A special focus is being placed on workforce development, especially as it pertains to Virgin Islanders and belongers job seekers. This shift further allows the department to pay closer attention to the labor market and its needs, the development of local workforce, the facilitation of extensive training and apprenticeship understudy programs. This will allow Virgin Islanders and belongers to be better prepared for, before, during, and after employment. Mr. Speaker, the department is also working towards the rejuvenation and creation, in some instances, of a more prominent health and safety culture at workplaces throughout the territory. To this end, at the end of this week, a health and safety campaign will be launched to better allow the department to reach this goal. This campaign will be used to educate employers of the requirements of Part 9 of the Labor Code, which speaks to health, safety, and welfare. Labor inspectors will visit businesses to provide guidance on the compliance, as well as facilitate short trainings about health and safety. Employers will also gain knowledge on the effects and preventative methods of health and safety in our everyday lives. The campaign will also support initiatives for students at both the primary and secondary levels throughout the territory. This will inform students of safety measures to take while at home and at school, thus building the foundation in each child that will lead to better workplace safety in the future. The International Labour Organization, ILO, mandates that we must have safety and health at the heart of the future of work. Mr. Speaker, as we move into the second quarter of 2019, I am pleased to say that the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, which plays a key role in Phase 1 of the e-government initiative to bring government services online, is ready to roll out the Work Permit Online system to the people of the Virgin Islands. Mr. Speaker, by late August, the business community will be able to submit work permit applications, make payments, and receive updates and notifications of the status of their work permits online. This, Mr. Speaker, is a step in the right direction for the Department of Labor and Workforce Development and the Immigration Department. Mr. Speaker, labor reform makes up a significant part of the strategic direction of my ministry, as we strive to ensure that harmonious working environments exist between employers and employees. Workplaces are ones that are safe and healthy. Capacity is built to accommodate the growing workforce. More Virgin Islanders and belongers are employed, and there's improved efficiency in the services being provided to all clients. Mr. Speaker, we are changing the way we do business. Now my immigration statement, not very long. Mr. Speaker, the security of our borders is a matter of great urgency. We continue to see the effects within the Immigration Department resulting from the lack of a proper border management system. Migrants continue to remain in the Virgin Islands illegally, resulting in high levels of undocumented persons living among us. Mr. Speaker, we must ramp up enforcement at our borders. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Natural Resources, Labor and Immigration, in collaboration with the Immigration Department, is forging ahead towards a more secure Virgin Islands. During my statement on 3rd June at the 4th sitting of this Honorable House, I stated that Cabinet had not only approved the company that will carry out the works, but also made funds available for the introduction of a new management system for the Immigration Department. Mr. Speaker, this system will revolutionize the way we handle the movement of people at our ports of entry. This system will result in much-needed integration of intelligence between Her Majesty's Customs, Civil Registry and Passport Office, Royal Virgin Islands Police Force, BVI Airports Authority, just to name a few. The very notable introduction of e-visas will also be available to persons seeking to travel to the Virgin Islands. This will allow them to make applications and receive approvals all online. Further, the proper collection of data for use by Immigration Department, the Central Statistics Unit, and the BVI Tourist Board for their various uses will be readily available. Mr. Speaker, we are jointly securing our Virgin Islands. Mr. Speaker, the Premier will make a statement tomorrow about the Immigration Regularization Initiative. This we hope to start back soon. The Premier and I have worked diligently on this initiative, and we are excited to see the backlog and unregularized persons becoming regularized. The Immigration Department is prepared and ready to take applications beginning soon for persons attempting to become regularized through residency and belong status, as well as persons becoming regularized who are third generation's descent. Mr. Speaker, this will make way for the introduction of the new policy on obtaining belonger and residency status, which will ultimately shape new legislation in the Virgin Islands. As the Department and Ministry continue to work diligently on the new policy, we have not forgotten the suggestions made by the public. Many concerns shared by Virgin Islanders, belongers, and residents during the public meetings for immigration regularization have been considered during this ongoing process. Mr. Speaker, the public is asked to continue to be engaged in immigration reform and to listen for information on upcoming consultations for the new policy on obtaining residency and belong status in the Virgin Islands. Mr. Speaker, the Immigration Department is also going online. Along with the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, the Immigration Department plays a vital role in the work permit process and the upcoming work permit online system. The work permit online system is due to be launched in late August. The online system will allow work permit holders the benefit of visiting the department only to receive updated entry permits or stamps to their passports without the long wait. This, Mr. Speaker, is progress. Mr. Speaker, more importantly, the Immigration Department is creating a training and development module for its officers and staff. With the right training to complement what officers have already attained, the department will be better poised to carry out its duties in a more efficient and customer-friendly manner. Mr. Speaker, I will continue to work to make sure that the well-being and continued development of the officers and staff remain a priority. Mr. Speaker, we have to secure our people and help them develop. For without the people, the vision must perish. Mr. Speaker, in closing up, my ministry also realizes that several of its subject areas are complex, and the public is often unaware of its functions and the obligations the public, have to these departments. The Immigration Department is no exception to this. Therefore, my team is working towards a public communication initiative to educate the public of important aspects of the immigration and Passport Act, as well as internal immigration policies that may affect the everyday lives and the legal functioning of their businesses. Mr. Speaker, we are bringing real change to law enforcement. I thank you very kindly.
I thank the Minister for Natural Resources, Labour and Immigration for his statement. Is there any other statements? I recognize the Minister for Health and Social Development and Territorial Member, the Honourable Carvin Malone.
Mr. Speaker, I also join in welcoming the member from the Fort to this body and look forward to his usual spirited debate and contributions. I have one statement that I would like to make. Mr. Speaker, although I have on 2 occasions reported on the effects of the fires that has made the incinerator at Parkwood Pond inoperable, I nevertheless find it necessary to report on interim measures taken while the control panel is being assembled and the electrical works are being conducted. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to report that deposits to Consutect and Skelton Electricals have been paid and work on both contracts have commenced. It has been advised that the lead time for the construction, assembly, delivery, commissioning, and initiation of the panel is estimated between 8 to 12 weeks. In the interim, Mr. Speaker, all efforts shall continue and be enhanced to reduce the occurrences of spontaneous combustion and the ensuing smoke that affect residents and visitors alike. Although not uncommon to all landfills and or dumping sites, the nuisance caused by the smoke have given rise to both immediate and medium-term measures as follows. 1, the Environmental Department is now in the possession of approximately 400 filtered masks, which would be available to affected persons and households in Parkwood Pond and west of the incinerator beginning Thursday, July 18th, at the Office of Environmental Health located at Johns Hole next to the Red Cross building. The staff of the department will be on hand to demonstrate and train individuals on the proper usage of the masks supplied. I must add that I do believe that we would have enough and will procure enough so that residents in Virgin Gorda and any other areas that may well be affected by this until we have it under control would also be invited to actually participate in the training and the supply of these masks. Mr. Speaker, the department will embark on a project to install 4 air quality monitoring stations in the surrounding communities of the Parkwood Pond Waste Management Site so as to advise residents of the corrective actions that will be deemed necessary in the event of the disturbances caused by the fires and smoke. Requests for proposals for the specifications, sourcing, and pricing of both foam and seawater pumping, transmission, and disperse equipment has been advised and initiated at the department and at the ministry. Requests for proposals for the specifications, sourcing, and pricing for proper landfill equipment for the compaction and capping of materials at the Parkwood Pond site or at any future site has been advised and will be initiated again at the ministry. There is no time like the present to fully, and I mean fully, initiate the principles of reduce, reuse, and recycle. The consultants are finalizing their findings and reports. A comprehensive report and a way forward would immediately follow. There now exists a number of agents, companies, and individuals who, on various measures, have initiated the recycling measures, and we acknowledge their efforts like times before. The contracts and arrangements to remove derelict vehicles from the territory are now in the advanced stages. Once completed, the current storage sites, and we know them, first we'll mention Seacoast Bay, Parkwood Pond, Coxseat, and other sites would be restored. Complete specifications of the Parkwood Pond site as a state-of-the-art waste management site is being completed by the consultants, and again, we would invite tenders for the sourcing, pricing, and installation of whatever form of equipment necessary to minimize the volume that will go into the incinerator, and as a result, the treated waste that would actually result. Mr. Speaker, the situation at Parkwood Pond is and will continue to be taken with the urgency that it is. Thank you very much.
I thank the Minister for Health and Social Development for his statement, and I thank all ministers for their statements. Again, please remember to ensure that they have the relevant copies, that your private secretaries and permanent secretaries make the relevant copies, and also your GIS officer to get them out to the press. I call on the Deputy Clerk.
Item number 6, presentation of papers.
I call on the Minister for Health and Social Development.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to inform and lay on the table the following document. British Virgin Islands Health Services Authority Revenue and Expenditure Budget for the financial year 2018-2019. The BVI Health Services Authority mission is to improve the health of the community and region by promoting healthier lifestyles through education and technology and delivering compassionate, client-centered care. The intent is to provide residents and visitors to the British Virgin Islands with effective and efficient primary and secondary health care services, as well as acute and emergent care. The 2018-2019 budget is designed to ensure continued growth and advancement of the authority as the organization continues to make positive strides towards accomplishing its strategic vision and mission. And I shall lay on the House. Mr. Speaker.
I thank you, Minister for Health and Social Development. I call on the Clerk.
Item number 7, notices of motions given orally.
I call on the Premier and the Minister of Finance, the Honorable Andrew A. Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to give notice that at a later stage in the proceeding, I will seek leave to move the motion standing my name under item 9.1, Roman numeral 1, 2, and 4 through 8 on the order of the day.
I thank the Premier. I call on the Minister for Natural Resources, Labor and Immigration.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that leave be granted to introduce the following bill standing in my name, shortly entitled Trade in Endangered Species, CITES Act 2019.
Thank you, Minister for Natural Resources, Labor and Immigration. It wasn't a notice.
I didn't hear the notice.
Well, he used to read exactly what is on the motion given orally.
Oh.
Yeah, he's to, according to what's on the order paper, that's what he's to recite.
Go ahead.
And that he did. I call on the senior member of the House and member for the 3rd District, the Honorable Julian Fraser.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is this thing on? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I give notice that at a later stage in the proceedings, I will seek leave to ask a question standing in my name on the items 8.1 through 8.4 on the order of the day.
I thank you, member for the 3rd District. At this time, we will take a 6 minutes recess and resume. The House is now in a short recess. This Honorable House is back in session. Please be seated. I call on the Honorable Premier and Minister of Finance to move a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move the motion that item number 9 on the order of the day is moved up, Mr. Speaker, and comes after item number 7 on the order of the day. And question and answers, Mr. Speaker, come before item 10 on the order of the day.
I raise the second motion.
A motion has been moved and seconded to move item number 8 on the order of the day to appear before
Item number 9 to appear before item number 8.
item
Number
before
9
item number.
comes after number 7.
Oh, got it. Okay, so the motion on the floor is that we move up items number 9 to fall under item number 7, and that item number 8, question and answer, will now be reorganized before item number 10.
Yes.
Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The motion carry to reorder the order of the day. I call on the Premier. Sorry, I call on the clerk.
Item number 9, public business. 1, government business.
I call on the Premier.
To move a motion in first reading.
Yeah, I call on the Premier to address item number 9 on the order of the day, government business.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, before I move for leave to be granted, I must say that this piece of legislation is a very serious piece of legislation. There's a lot of work still to be done on it. But when it leaves this House, it will be completely redefined to operate both on the domestic, regional, and international stage. And I have no doubt that other countries will follow this model because of all of us going to give our input for all of us live in this new world called the global village, and our character, our good name, or reputation should be gathered at all costs, especially after today. So, Mr. Speaker, I now move that leave be granted to introduce the following bill standing in my name, shortly entitled Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Amendment Act 2019.
I rise to second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded that leave to introduce the bill shortly entitled Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Amendment Act 2019 be granted. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. I call on the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to introduce the bill standing in my name, shortly entitled Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Amendment Act 2019, and will explain its provisions at the second reading. Mr. Speaker, so I move that the bill shortly entitled Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Amendment Act 2019 be now read a first time.
I rise to second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Amendment Act 2019 be now read a first time. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. I call on the Deputy Clerk to read the bill for the first time.
This act may be cited as the Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Amendment Act 2019.
I call on the Honorable Premier and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I move that leave be granted to introduce the following bill standing in my name, shortly entitled Beneficial Ownership Source Secure Search System Amendment Number 2, Act 2019.
I rise to second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded that leave to introduce the bill shortly entitled Beneficial Ownership Secure Search System Amendment Number 2, Act 2019 be granted. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. I call on the Premier and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to introduce the bill standing in my name shortly entitled Beneficial Ownership Secure Search System Amendment Number 2, Act 2019, and will explain its provision at the second reading. Mr. Speaker, sir, I move that the bill shortly entitled Beneficial Ownership Secure Search Amendment Act Number 2, Act 2019, be now read a first time.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Beneficial Ownership Secure Search System Amendment Number 2, Act 2019 be now read a first time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? I call on the Deputy Clerk to read the bill for the first time.
This act may be cited as the Beneficial Ownership Secure Search System Amendment Number 2 Act 2019.
I thank you. I call on the Minister for Natural Resources, Labor and Immigration.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I take leave to introduce the bill, I'd just like to say, as persons are traveling more and more and are more prone to travel with pets and so forth, we're seeing a problem in our territory with persons wanting to bring exotic animals and plants into the territory. And as we are trying to revive agriculture and other sectors, it's very important that we understand the implications of this activity here. So, Mr. Speaker, I now take leave and introduce the bill standing in my name shortly entitled Trade in Endangered Species Act 2019. Be now read a first time.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded that leave to introduce the bill shortly entitled Trade in Endangered Species CITES Act 2019 be granted. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. I call on the Minister for Natural Resources, Labor and Immigration.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Use the bill standing in my name shortly entitled Trade in Endangered Species CITES Act 2019. For its first reading. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll explain its provisions at a later sitting, at second reading.
Continue with page 3, Mr. Speaker. I move the bill shortly.
Please. Mr. Speaker, I move the bill shortly entitled Trade in Endangered Species Act 2019. Be now read a first time.
Is there a second?
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Trade in Endangered Species CITES Act 2019 be read a first time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. I call on the Deputy Clerk to read the bill for the first time.
This act may be cited as a Trade in Endangered Species CITES Act 2019 and shall come into force on such date as the Minister may, by notice published in the Gazette, appoint.
Thank you. Honorable members, at this time, I will recess the House until the 25th of July, 2019, in which we will continue the same sitting. This House is now in recess.